Hey, this is Lex, and welcome to another episode of Lipstick and Liberation, a podcast where I, a now 41-year-old Black feminist, talk about the issues of the day that matter the most to me and share it with you, my perspective, my feelings, the stories of other women, and how I hope we're going to be able to overcome and survive and be able to find love and joy in these very trying times, especially politically for women right now. This is a left-leaning podcast, in case you were wondering. Not leftist, but left leaning. I am hailing from Michigan, originally from Flint, Michigan, but I live in the Kalamazoo area now. And I am just so excited to get started talking about these topics, as I say every week. So, with misogyny, as with my lipstick, I always get the shade right. I definitely want to start out this week with talking about the magnification of Nicki Minaj and how that has basically created this discussion about the protecting of Black women recently. We saw a lot of things where people have tried to say that because Nicki Minaj became MAGA, that people are rejecting her for being an independent thinker. And I always reject that label that people who are Black who become Republican are independent thinkers, because there is no independent thought there. The reality is that the political spectrums already exist where people have these specific thoughts assigned to those sides. So if you choose one side or the other, you're not really thinking independently per se, because you are going along with a group of ideas that's already been associated with somebody else. And it's disingenuous. It's just basically trying to insinuate that Black people who are liberal or progressive just because they're being told to be liberal or progressive, and not because they really and truly hold those values, which I totally believe is false. Most Black people are, socially conservative. We are. But the thing with Black people is, historically in this country, we have experienced so much oppression that our personal social conservative values, typically we don't think that the government has the right to impress that on everybody else. Like, even if I'm a Black person who's religious and maybe I'm a little homophobic and I'm not really that amped up about gay people getting married, I know that that's my personal opinion. And I don't believe that my personal opinion has to be national policy. So yes, you will run into Black people who are socially conservative, but they don't want the government and their opinion to be the only way that other people can live, because we've experienced what that's like, and we believe that people should be free as long as they're not hurting anybody else to do whatever they want to do in this country and be able to pursue that without being persecuted. Now, the reality of it is that when white people are conservative, they actually think and how they feel is how the entire country should run. And that's built into their white supremacy, in that the best way to live life is the way that they're living life. So if they think that abortion is wrong, then nobody should be able to get an abortion. It's not people's choice. Whereas Black people will be anti-abortion in their day-to-day lives. They may be a person that says, I would never get an abortion, but they don't think that typically across the board that means nobody else should be able to get one because that's my preference. So that's the big difference between how conservatism typically plays out in Black circles and then how it plays out in white circles. So when we have Black people who are becoming conservative, the reason that they have, and I mean movement-wise, the so-called independent thinkers, the reason why they have the backlash from Black people is we see them siding with oppression. It's not specifically that they believe in these specific things, but it's that they believe that these specific things should govern the lives of everybody else. And being a Black person, that you should understand why thinking that just your specific opinion about how the world should run is dangerous, because there were times where people thought that we shouldn't be able to have the right to vote. We shouldn't be able to go to school with white children. There were times where people put their own beliefs, whether they were based on science or fact or not, which we know they were not, ahead of what was best for everybody else, just because that's the way things always were. And that's what conservatism often points back to, that the way things were before is better. And as Black people, it is hard to truly believe that when the way things were before resulted in us not having basic civil rights. So that is why on a very basic level, you see Black people having backlash towards other Black people who align themselves with the Republican or conservative movement, because at that point you're aligning yourself with trying to stay the same or not having progress. And we've relied on progress for survival and to move forward in this country. Without progress, I'm a generation outside of Jim Crow. Without progress, my dad, the progress that they all fight for, which, I'm glad that he did not live to see some of the things that have been rolled back. But without progress, I wouldn't even be able to be here making this podcast, talking to an audience like I am. So it seems very hypocritical of me to say things should always stay the same when my existence and who I am is a product of things not staying the same. So getting back to Nicki Minaj, people's problem with her is not specifically that she has conservative values. People's problem with her is that she aligned herself with MAGA because she's a bully. And MAGA is a bully cult. That is what they do. They don't have any rules. And MAGA and the Barbs really kind of go hand in hand. If you really think about it, their fan base is very, very similar in how they operate. And I can honestly say I'm not surprised that she was MAGA. We've seen so many people who kind of fit her criteria join this movement. Usually they're a little washed up. They've become unpopular. MAGA is so loyal to whatever Donald Trump tells them to say, do, or think that people like that who are starting to feel like they're losing the popularity or relevance they had, that is a great way to go. If you want to kind of feel like you can do something and say something and have a bunch of people stick up for you, no matter what you do or say, because it's always right. And the Barbs already kind of do that for Nicki. I mean, even down to her choice of husband, they already kind of do that. So just seeing that she was a supporter of so many people who SA'd people, married a rapist and somebody on the sex offender list, it's not surprising that she would go this route, because that is what a lot of MAGA is. People unquestioningly supporting people who've done terrible things just because they like those people or they like what those people are doing for them. So once she joined, nobody was really surprised. But Black people are not going to stick by you when you join something like that, because MAGA has been detrimental to Black people. There have been several things said about Black people, that Haitians are eating cats and dogs, that they're constantly saying that people who are Somali are low IQ. They are constantly saying DEI, that Black people, if we're in certain positions, we're not qualified, while they will hire white people who literally are not doctors or have no medical background to run the Health and Human Services Department or be, Surgeon General. The irony of all of that, but it's intentional. That's part of white supremacy, is telling the most qualified Black person that they're not good enough, while telling a white person who may have no background in the thing that they're going to put them into that you are good enough just by default, because I, a white person, said you are and you are white. So that stuff's all intentional. And it makes sense that she would align herself with that, because it makes it hard to question what somebody is doing and what somebody is saying if you have to constantly support it no matter what, which is what MAGA does. So her aligning herself with that was always going to be unpopular with Black people, always. And then the gaslighting that's coming from her fan base, where they're saying, well, they're making jokes about her because Deion Cole made that joke at the NAACP award, while they're saying oh, well, it's protect Black women until it's Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj has not been kind to a lot of Black women who are her peers in the industry. She's never protected other Black women. Even the rappers that she's recruited to kind of be like her so-called lapdogs in the rap disagreement or beef she's had with Cardi B for forever now, she hasn't even stuck up for them when they're getting dragged. So she doesn't protect Black women. The only Black woman that Nicki Minaj protects is herself. So if you're a Black woman, why would you be obligated to protect Nicki Minaj? Why is the Black community obligated to protect her when the only Black woman she protects, like I said, is herself? Protect Black women is a social contract. You have to put into it to get out of it too. You can't be saying that we need to protect you when you're constantly out here harming other Black women, talking about them, their dead mother, calling, saying the things she said about Cardi B's daughter, the things she said about Megan Thee Stallion, not believing her, and what happened to her and her domestic violence, picking on Lotto, when Lotto didn't really seem to have done anything to her. That's the thing, is that she has shown herself to be a bully across so many different beefs and disagreements with other Black women. She has this obsession with Jay-Z right now, which I just kind of have ignored her for the most part, but I've seen her Twitter rants because I'm on Twitter a lot. And Elon Musk, the way he has changed up the algorithm, you are going to see certain people. And it seems like if a person aligns himself with the right wing politics, he's really going to make sure you see them. So I started seeing more of her stuff after all of that. And so she has this strange obsession with attacking certain high level black people. But then when some black people clap back at her, then we're supposed to protect her. And it's like, no, you need to be in it with us, not for yourself. And she's constantly demonstrated that she's in it for herself and herself only. She's constantly, since she came out, since her and Little Kim, like, she has constantly shown that she is in it for herself. And you cannot gaslight people into like protecting her or saying it's wrong to talk about her. We've talked about black Republicans forever. Kanye West got it when it was his time. Candace Owens gets made fun of. Black people don't like black Republicans for the reasons that I stated before. It feels like a betrayal for you to step over and say that progress and us moving forward as a society and being progressive is a bad thing when you're only here because of progressivism. Otherwise, you would still be in segregation and being cut off from opportunities, which, like I said, this administration is currently trying to cut black people off from. So I don't feel bad for her. Her fan base is, like I said, a great match for MAGA. They're very delusional and weird acting about her. And they defend every single thing she does without question. One thing I can say is people that I'm a fan of, I'm not doing that. I like Cardi B. I happen to really, really like her. I'm going to see her in a couple weeks. I didn't like her ex-husband or soon-to-be ex-husband. I did not like her new baby daddy. And I never sat up there and defended them because regardless of me being a fan of her, it's not my job to make it seem like every decision she makes is a great decision. It's not. And that's the difference with these stands. And that's why, like I said, they match up with MAGA so well because just like with Donald Trump, MAGA supports everything he does. So she's fine where she is, honestly. I hope that, whatever she's pursuing over there, whatever grift that she's running over there, she's happy and she makes whatever profit she needs to make to sustain her lifestyle and keep her pet sex offender safe and whatever she wants to do. But black people we don't owe her any loyalty. She certainly hasn't showed any loyalty to black women in the industry. She's really just loyal to herself. And I think MAGA is actually the perfect movement for people who only have loyalty to themselves, because you really have to be a person that lacks empathy and that does not care about anybody else to join a political movement like that demonizes so many other people when things are not going your way. So I don't begrudge her that. I hope her and her fans enjoy their time pretending to be independent thinkers when the only thing they think is what she tells them to think, and the only thing MAGA thinks is what Donald Trump tells them to think. So, and speaking of that, we know this whole thing popped off with Iran. He was run as the no Middle East war presidential candidate. And, I'm not going to send your kids somewhere to die. And then he does that. And so you see a lot of MAGA have turned around on their stance on that because he's always right. So they have to do that. That's just the way things are. And the Trump presidency has truly been something that has been just every day you wake up and it's something else and you almost get numb to it. Like I talk about how I was a survivor of narcissistic abuse as domestic violence. And it's so real because I think that so many people are getting a glimpse of it on a macro level with what it's like to wake up with a chaotic president every day. This is like what it's similar to what it is like to wake up with a chaotic partner. You don't know what's going to happen every day. You just know whatever they did, it's supposed to be right. If you question it, you will be attacked. People will say something's wrong with you, just like you don't love America, or, how could you say something like that? How could you say, they say like, oh, of course he was gonna, he had to do this. Like, even though the day before they said they did not want this war, that's what it's like when you are with a partner like that, who their reality, they will constantly change it to fit what they want to do. Nothing they say really matters. Whatever they decide to do, the next day you just better be with it or you're gonna catch hell. And that's what's happening to us in America. And it's sad. I understand, though, as a person who studied politics, my degree is in political science, that the reality of American imperialism and how America functions in the world. And basically, since World War II, how we have intervened with other nations, been a part of toppling regimes, caused destabilization in countries, embargoes that have impoverished people. Like, we have done things as a country that have been detrimental to other countries, and we felt it was in our interest as U.S. citizens because In a lot of ways, like the person we talked about at the beginning, the United States is always looking out for itself first. It's not protect all countries, it's just protect us. So even when we are protecting other countries, it's really because it benefits us to protect them. So still about protect us. Everything is strategic. So whenever leftists are so critical, because so many people were saying, hey, if we just voted for Kamala, this wouldn't have happened. And to an extent, I do agree. I understand why people argue that both parties are the same, because at the end of the day, America does have an imperialistic way that it runs. Our blanket foreign policy is imperialistic. We will intervene with things. Like I said, we will topple regimes. But the way Democrats and Republicans typically tend to handle those things are not the same. Most Democrats are a little bit more reticent to go to war than Republicans are. They're going to try talks and deals, and they're going to try to do sanctions a little bit more than Republicans are. They might hit a few airstrikes. Republican presidents, since George W. Bush, I would say especially, have been more hawkish about what they want to do when they are not getting the response they want from other countries and they feel like American interests are at risk. And saying that Democrats and Republicans operate the same way is just disingenuous when it comes to foreign policy. Yes, on Israel, it's pretty much the same. But Israel cannot be a make or break deal for people, because at the end of the day, people still got to survive here in the United States. And the United States, since World War II, like I said, has had a vested interest in the existence of Israel. So unless you're talking about taking up arms and having an armed revolution against this government to fundamentally change the way it works and the way it interacts with the rest of the world, you are not doing anything by not voting and allowing right-wing people to continue to vote because you're upset about America's policy with Israel. Because America's policy with Israel, that policy is likely older than you. So that's what I ran into so much when I was talking to younger leftists on Twitter, because I do care about what they think, even though I think they're wrong. I think when you're very, very young, you don't really understand how long these things have gone on, because I was born during the Reagan administration. I lived through Bush 1. I lived through Clinton. I lived through Bush 2, then Obama, then Trump, now Biden, and then Trump again. So I've lived through presidents. I've gotten to witness the pattern. I've also read biographies on almost every president we've had. Trump is the only one I just cannot stomach the idea of reading one for. But almost everybody else I've read biographies for. I've looked at their foreign policy. And you really just cannot say that they all operate in the same way. They don't. But there are just certain things in politics and in foreign policy that the United States has made as established as in our best interest. And those things are not going to go away. You're not going to get rid of an Israel policy that's been existing for this long in 1 or 2 election cycles, because those are things, it's like saying you want to rewrite the Pledge of Allegiance or you want to take something out of the Constitution at that point. Like, you're talking about something that's so established and so ingrained in the identity of what Americanism is and what American policy is, that changing that will fundamentally shift so many things. It's not that it's impossible, but what you're talking about, like I said, is, and I said this to a few leftists on Twitter the other day, if you guys aren't talking about picking up arms and overthrowing this entire government as it is, then you're not going to end the policy towards Israel. That's the reality. Not right now. Not unless something very, very drastic happens in the Middle East. It's not happening. And it's not right to prioritize that over the rights of trans people, over the rights of Black people, over the rights of women in this country. You're giving away rights of people who could probably help you with your mission to overturn this disastrous foreign policy choice that you don't like. But you're watching those people lose their rights because you refuse to do any kind of harm reduction or compromise with Democrats. And it's a foolish, foolish endeavor, but they're young. And when you're young, making foolish decisions don't feel like they are as consequential as they do as you get older. That's why revolution actually belongs to young people, because older people, we have 401ks, we have houses, we have kids. We're less likely to go through and try to create some kind of upheaval to a system that we've already bought into so substantially. Kids, they don't have much in it. They've just started out. There's not a lot in their 401k. They don't have a house. They maybe have an apartment or even a car. And that's another thing that's kind of foolish about how America has allowed capitalism to roll and eat up so much of the middle class, is that you need people that are invested in this system. Otherwise, you are going to push people to something very, very drastic. What they fail to realize is that having people who are invested, as many people as possible, makes it easier to keep systems up. That's the reality. Even if you think about something like slavery, there may have been people who owned slaves who really didn't think slavery was right, but they were so financially invested in slavery. They weren't going to free the slaves, whether it was a moral thing or not, because they had money. That was money then. That was financially how they were going to keep their family safe. That's what they were invested in. So when you have a system now where people are not making enough money, people can't own homes, people can't own anything because of how much money we've allowed billionaires to collect, and they're going to be focused on continuing to collect more and continue to push foreign policy and donating to candidates who are going to do the things that are going to protect their interests. Yet you have people on the bottom who have nothing. That's when you're making yourself ripe for revolution and overthrow. So there's so much going on politically right now. I understand why the young people are mad. I understand why the leftists are mad, but they're really not being practical. And there has to be some practicality, like I said. Unless you are out there training right now to really do some kind of regime change in the United States, which I hope you're not talking about that on Twitter if you are, because you won't get very far. The United States government is very good at dismantling those things, as Huey P. Newton and the Black Panthers and all those far left movements from the decades before. You know, read Black Against Empire if you have not. Read Stokely Carmichael's book if you have not. Understand that the United States government is very, very, very good at dismantling those movements, but also understand that you can't have people join your movements if those people are being locked up, thrown away, deported, forced to, they're committing unaliving of themselves because they're being forced to go back to a gender identity that they don't conform to. You still have an obligation and a duty as a citizen in this country, in this two-party system that we do live in, to try to make things as good as you can while you're working towards the change that you really want. Sitting out and refusing to help either party is not good. It's not a good policy, it's not a good practice, and it's not going to get you what you want in the end. Because like I said, what you want in the end is you want enough people around who agree with you who can move that way left. If you are going to allow the right to continue to win all these elections and continue to eliminate people who are not fitting in the mold of conservative whiteness, you're not going to have anybody to be on your side when you are actually ready to make these choices. You guys got to start being more pragmatic. You can hate everything about American foreign policy and still think about the domestic policy that protects American citizens here who may be useful to your movement. You guys got to stop it, like with this belief that only Israel and Palestine and stopping genocide is the only thing that matters, because it's not. Are right about the foreign policy, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of how America has conducted itself foreign policy wise for quite some time. I have a lot of complaints. Like I said, I am a person, like most of my collection over there, my book collection is written by people who were leftist during the 60s and the 70s. So I have a lot of thoughts about U.S. foreign policy, but at the end of the day, I'm still a Black woman. At the end of the day, I still got to survive. At the end of the day, I'm still a mother. At the end of the day, I'm still very compassionate about the people who are trans. I'm still very compassionate about women who do not want to give birth. I'm still very compassionate about women being able to get a divorce from toxic people and marriages. I don't want people to lose their rights. I also understand that in order to have any kind of change in this country, people who agree with me have to be free. They have to exist. So if I'm sitting here on my hands refusing to vote for people and withholding my vote because of from people because of U.S. foreign policy choices, I'm killing us domestically. And then there's going to be nobody left like me to help and continue that fight. You may feel like because you're voting for it, you're not making any progress. Understand, like I said, that you cannot make progress unless you're going to do something different than voting. But that doesn't mean that voting is not something to do. And you guys have got to get on the ball with that. It may take you some time. You may have to get older. You may have to see some things. Quite unfortunately, we should have never been in this situation with Donald Trump. The system failed us on so many levels. In a way, it could only fail somebody that was, fail people that were dealing with the rich white man trying to gain more power. It did fail us 100%. but we could have done better and we could have taken this more seriously. And I really think that so many people thought it wasn't serious because for so long, Democrats and Republicans have traded power and just traded little policy things here or there. The wars being the most controversial, but for most white people, things don't change that much between Democrats and Republicans. They thought it would be the same way with Donald Trump. They thought that checks and balances would protect them and stop him, and they haven't. We have really discovered that a lot of what's going on in America is based on the honor system. And only presidents who did what they were supposed to do because they actually felt a duty to do it, that's the only reason those things were done that way, because Donald Trump just does whatever he wants and nobody actually applies the rules or does things to stop him from doing whatever he wants. So he's just basically an agent of chaos and nobody's stopping him because we have been used to people doing what we thought was the right thing to do, following the Constitution, at least to their understanding, versus with him where he's just doing what he wants, the Constitution be damned. That's the conundrum we are in right now. And we don't have to be in this conundrum. We could have chosen better. We could have chosen Kamala Harris. We could have had a different outcome. We could not be at war if we had chosen Kamala Harris. And I do think we owe it to ourselves to be honest about that. I think so much of our problem right now is the lack of honesty. People just want to make a point. People just want to have a hit tweet. They just want to have a soundbite that resonates because everybody's attention spans are so short. And a lot of people who are even on Twitter and stuff talking politics now haven't even read a book or studied politics or haven't even lived through a couple of presidents, don't know what past presidents did. There's so many people that are living in these little micro moments just to get a soundbite out, just to have something to say. They don't even know really what they're talking about because it's important to just be impactful in this single moment rather than be thoughtful about long term. And I think that's also what has been driving leftists to stop voting for Democrats and protect the rights of other people who are suffering, like the people, I believe it was Kansas or Nebraska. I can't remember the state where they're saying like now that you have to basically turn in your driver's license if you're trans and get one that matches your birth certificate, which is ridiculous. The sex on your driver's license it's so pointless. And you don't want to have a driver's license that says you're a male and you look like a woman. That's just going to create a whole bunch of other stuff. There's so much going on, even with the SAVE Act, which I'm glad that that's stalled, but they're really trying to push it to make it so hard for people to vote. And if voting wasn't important, if it didn't matter, if both parties were the same, they wouldn't be trying that hard to make sure that only one party stays in power, which is what's going on right now. So I need you guys to wake up. I need you guys to be smart. I need you guys to stop being so reactive in the moment about things and understand that there are long-term things. There are long-term patterns that happen. I talked about this during my episode with Black History Month. You need to get in your liberation text. I don't care if you're spending 10 minutes or 15 minutes a night. If you're truly about what you say, if you truly believe in liberation and freedom for people, you need to be reading about the people who were trying to liberate us before, because the things that you are doing are not things that all of them would have agreed to be sound and the best method for moving forward. I always tell people with the civil rights movement, the reason they tell you that it was the nonviolent movement that moved it forward is because that's what they want you to think. It was always the threat of violence if the nonviolent movement wasn't respected that moved things forward. And that's the same thing with MAGA on the right. January 6th, perfect example. The threat of white people rebelling is what allows Donald Trump to get away with what he's getting away with. It's always the threat of the violence in the United States. So please understand, the nonviolent movement was the preferred movement. That is why they were able to get what they wanted done, because they did not want to deal with the radical blacks that had guns. And that's what you guys need to be thinking about. It's perfectly fine to want to push things further, but you need to realize that you still need that movement of respectability to get your agenda pushed through. You need those people that they think are the better people to go along with rather than having to deal with you. Because without those people, they're just going to think you're fringe and crazy. You need those people. You need to be encouraging people. You need to be in there voting for Democrats that are closest to you while you're still pushing back on things you don't like U.S. foreign policy. Because like I said, if you allow the right wing to take over, they're going to take away your right to exist and be. And you cannot fight for liberation when you cannot even exist, when they wipe you out of existence, when they wipe out your thought, when they take away your colleges, your places that you can gather, when they're getting rid of LGBTQIA people, when they're deporting people who are actually U.S. citizens because they'll say you're not a U.S. citizen because of your political beliefs and they want to get rid of you. You guys have to be smarter. You have to. Even revolution requires brains and not just guns. But if you guys are not ready to pick up those guns, then you need to be out here getting in the voting booth and doing more to protect the people who seem like the normal people to them, because that is your buffer when they want to say that you are too extreme. Let's listen to those guys. And if those guys believe in enough of your ideas, that is going to push progress forward. The idea that you have to get everything all at once or nothing is good, nothing is good enough, that's only an idea that's going to be upheld by actually going out there and erasing everything with violence. And if you can't do that, or you're not ready to do that, which I don't think most leftists are committed to doing that, I really don't. But be honest with yourself. If you're not committed to do that, then you're going to have to compromise. And compromise ain't all bad, baby. And I just want to leave you guys with that on politics. I want to see America get better. I don't know if it can. It's been built on this premise of ugliness for so long and oppression for so long, but I'm tired of seeing people saying women shouldn't vote. I'm tired of people saying that black people are not worthy. I'm tired of mass shootings going on, and then the person is a white male assigned at birth, and then they try to blame it on trans people to protect white men as the perpetrators of these violent crimes, because they want to say everything about everybody else and how every other group acts, but they don't want to talk about the violence of men and the violence of white men. I want to see in America we can start having honest conversations again, and not conversations based on who can point the finger at somebody else the best, who can set up the narrative to make the other person look worse when the problem really isn't that person. I want an America that actually cares about solving the real problem for a change versus blaming it on somebody else so the people who are in power can continue to have power. That's what I want. And I'm willing to compromise to get there. I'm willing to give a little so that my son can maybe get a little bit further than me if I don't get where I need to get. And that's where we need to be. About on a much lighter note is I did see Scream 7 tonight, and I am a fan of horror. I'm a big fan of the Scream series. I love the Scream series. I saw it when it originally came out, the first one. Also a really big fan of Wes Craven. Nightmare on Elm Street is the horror movie that scared me the most. I mean, when I say horror movie scarred me, I saw it when I was 6. My dad took us to some friend's house, and some older kids were watching it, and horrible supervision on my dad's part, of course, that we were left with these older kids that was watching this movie. But I had so many nightmares for years that I never watched that movie again because I knew it scared me. And then when I got grown and I finally was brave enough to watch it again, I saw so many of my nightmares came directly from that movie. So Wes Craven is like a horror god to me just because he scared me so bad. And I love the meta and the references. Every time I rewatch the Scream movies, I see things that I did not see before. So I was really excited about Scream 7. I was, of course, disappointed that the actress got fired from Scream 5 and 6 because of her pro-Palestine views, they said. And I totally, think that that is wrong. And I really like the direction they were going with the series. But I was happy to have Sydney back. What I felt about Scream 7 is, overall, I think I'll give it like a 7 out of 10. And I will say, spoiler alert, just in case there's something in here that may spoil the effect of the movie for you guys, even though I try to stay away from like the big names of who did what. I really liked how the movie talked about moms being afraid of passing their trauma on to children, and how we try to balance preparing them for the world that they're in, but also protecting them from what we came from. And also, as a person who believes in ancestral worship, like I said, I practice ancestor worship, understanding that sometimes the things that were visited upon us are going to be visited upon our kids, and we have to prepare them for those things. We can't protect them for everything. That's why it's so important we tell them about our past, and we tell them about the past that their relatives experience, because sometimes things, demons that people from your past experience do pop back up in your children, whether they be angry or inability to cope with certain things. ADHD, some things are hereditary, autism. Like, there's so many things that we get from our bloodline. It is very, very irresponsible for us to not know our bloodline, because those people existed, I believe, not only to have their lives, but so that our lives could be easier thereafter, based on us getting information about how they lived their life so we can go a little further. I think that's the point of giving birth and moving on, if there is any point, is that each generation can get a little further and do a little better. That should be the goal. So I really liked how the movie touched upon that. I did not like with the movie that the way they used the return of Stu Macher. I did not like the reveal of who the killers were. I just felt like it wasn't really earned. And I felt like Gail was sidelined a little too much for me. But overall, I did enjoy the movie. I just think that it was so Sydney focused and trying to reintroduce her back into the film series that I think it neglected some other things that it really would have needed to be a totally solid outing. But I loved it. I'm one of the rare people that I love all the Scream movies. I will watch any of them again. If anybody puts on any Scream movie, I'm going to sit down and watch it. Any of them. And I love that, that genre of horror and the final girl thing. I think that's so empowering. Like, that was really a place where women could be empowered, like overcoming over and over again. I'm glad Sydney's still alive. I don't ever want her to die. I hope that if Sydney goes on and on and on and there's a Scream in a nursing home and they make that, I will be seated. But I love the final girl motif. I love having women survive. I just love women surviving. I do, 100%. I hate that Sydney has to have so much trauma. And I hate so much of the trauma is based on the fact that her mom, got essayed and became so wild and crazy with who all she was sleeping with. But I love watching Sydney survive. There's something very inspirational about that. So I'll always be back for the Scream movies. Like I said, I just really think the theme was great, but I think the kills in this were amazing to me. I really like what they did with Ghostface. A lot of the setups, each Ghostface chase was excellent. I just really wish they had done a little bit more of the character development, especially with the younger crowd, and giving Gale a little bit more to do. And I wish that the killers had been, in my opinion, more consequential than they were. But if you guys want to tell me what you think, definitely leave something in the comments. Send me a message. Hey, take some time if you can to drop a like on my Facebook page. It's also Lipstick and Liberation. You can go to Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. I would love that. If you would follow me on my Instagram, you can find it. It's Lipstick and Liberation, but it's spelled a little funky with a period in it. If you look it up, you'll see my logo. And I shared it on my Facebook page. But I really enjoyed being able to come back and talk to you guys. As I'm finishing up school this week, I'll actually be working on a project when I get off of here. I think I'll be having more time in March to really get back to doing this weekly. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Just school and everything else, this economy, it has been just really hard to stick with this, but I am here. I'm glad I had a moment to sit down and talk to you guys. I'm sending you guys so much love and light in this very trying time, and I hope you're finding a way to survive and to love yourself and be kind to yourself as a woman, and to remember you exist for yourself, not for the service of men, not specifically for the service of your children. Don't forget that you're a person too, and you deserve the world. Good night.